Vroom.
Zoom.
Hello, and welcome back to talking about how closed mouths don't get fed. Apparently, according to Julie, if you just go up to Taco Bell and say, "Can I get a free drink?" they will give you one.
No, Maddie, this is an F1 podcast. Also, that happened one time. Don't harass your local Taco Bell employees. Hello and welcome to 17 to 1. My name's Julia. I know a lot about F1.
My name is Maddie, and I know varying amounts of F1, learning and dislearning every day.
So true. Welcome back to our series, Champions and Crashouts, wherein we evaluate the previous week's race and talk about who had a great weekend, a champion-like weekend, if you will, and who had a not so great weekend, either because they physically or mentally crashed out. Last weekend was Imola.
E- that is like the same vibes as Ricola.
What I think of every time I see the circuit name.
It looks like a sock.
It does look like a sock. And just like a sock, things were sliding all over the place this weekend.
That was a bit of a stretch, but okay, yeah, I'd have to agree. As always, we're going to start out with our champions, and I think the first and foremost champion is Max. Not only did he place in P1, he had a gorgeous overtake at the very start, going on the outside and then the inside without pushing anyone off the track or being pushed off himself.
We love to see it. Move of a world champion, that one, to quote Oscar Piastri from last year.
Yep, move of a world champion.
But in a very different circumstance. Such a beautiful overtake from Max. He was so late on the braking. Like, watching it, I was like, man, he screwed that start. Like, he did not get a good off the start. Like, Oscar looked like he was gonna go, and Max just all of a sudden shot past him. And I was like, where did you come from? Like, I don't even blame Oscar for afterwards being like, yes, I was caught completely by surprise. Like, I think we were all caught by surprise.
Props for George for being like, what is Oscar doing?
Oscar terrorizing George is underrated, to be honest with you. It happened so much last year, and every single time it did not get the attention it deserved. I love to see it.
I'm sad I missed that because I really think there's nothing better in F1 than drivers terrorizing other drivers. Like Max, after the safety car was lifted and everyone's just waiting for him to go, and he's just like, wee, like I'm still warming up my tires, and then boom. Like,
Is so good at timing those restarts so that he has an advantage. It's like, it's so much fun to see every time. It does get, like, safety car restarts always give me a healthy amount of stress, but I feel like I do stress a little bit less when Max is at the front because, like you said, he's just so casual about it, you know? He's like weaving, he's warming up his tires. Everybody's like, is he gonna go? Is he not gonna go? And then before you know it, he's gone. And again, he like shot off so well. I don't know what was in that upgrade they brought to the Red Bull car this weekend, but I would like more of that. That was nice.
honestly, it was probably pure spite.
Fair. Moving on from Max, I think our second top champion of the weekend, he was disappointed, but I was not disappointed. It was Mr. Alex Albon.
That was they had that strategy. They played it very well. I do, because I didn't, when I joined, I only watched the late latter half, so I ended up going back and watching the former half, and I was very surprised to see how that played out because he started out in like P5, P6, give or take, and I was like, how did this guy, he's not a bad driver, but I'm like, how did he manage to get all the way up to P3, especially when you're competing with George Russell and you're competing with the McLarens, and he really played his cards right. Unfortunately, I do believe with the virtual safety car, well, not the virtual safety card, with the safety car and then the timing of tires, unfortunately, that's where it started to get a little rough. But he did play his cards right to get up to that P3. Would have loved to see if he could have held that, but
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a bit inevitable that Oscar was going to pass him to get the P3 position, was hoping that he could hold on to the P4. He actually was super hopeful after the safety car restart. He said that, he knew that Oscar was on old tires ahead of him and he felt like he could have been able to catch him. And I honestly think that, in another life, maybe he could have. In a life where Charles Leclerc didn't body him off the track and then Lewis Hamilton went by. But considering, this man is in a Williams and he's up there competing for positions with Ferraris, with McLarens, it was a great race by him. It was absolutely incredible. Again, he said that he was a little disappointed at the end, but I think he has nothing to be disappointed about.
It was a wonderful race. Like, I have no clue about you, but when I came into the season in the latter half of the year, I never would have. Williams was like, rumors had it Williams was being held with duct tape. So I never would have guessed that Williams would have ever gotten up to a P3.
I mean, considering they ended last year with like DNFing the last like 5 races or something like that. And then coming into this year, they were like, we're not going to put like a lot of, like, they're still using their 2024 chassis. They're like, we're not doing like a lot of development on the car. We're just, we're going to focus on 26. And they've had a huge improvement. I mean, I'm in love with James Vowles. And and I don't know what he's done. I mean, it's a great, at some point last year, he talked about it and he's like, we're in a very unique opportunity right now where we can just break everything down and then completely rebuild it with the new regulations. And it makes me excited for next year. Like, we could really, in real life, be seeing the Williams resurgence for the first time since like the 90s.
It'll definitely be interesting. Taking that, we can move on to our next champion. I have very different standards as an F1 newbie compared to Julia, who has been in it for a while and she knows a little bit more of the lore than I do.
I
I
think I'm
think
just more of a bitch than you are. That's a nice way
no,
to
because
put
if
it.
we were to talk about this with like swimming and someone was like, "Oh, he passed him," I was like, "Yeah, but his turn was sloppy." And like as a veteran going up against a rookie, I would like expect this, like because he has more training and he knew how to utilize the wall and the push off against the waves and stuff like that. So that's why I say that. But also I might not say it out loud. Lando Norris is a champion, and I'm talking about his overtake with George. It was very smooth. It was very nice, especially since I was seeing TikToks of people being like, Imola doesn't have overtakes. Imola this, Imola that, Imola. And then we had like so many smooth overtakes. His overtake with Oscar, was nice, but as someone who had like some degradation, not even some degradation on his tires, I would hope he could pass. But he had a good overtake. So Lando Norris, you get a good job. Good job.
And Maddie's gonna make people attack me on the internet. But I will say, I do think that he had a good race in Imola. He managed his tires well enough that he was able to benefit from a later pit stop. Even though he kind of got screwed over with the virtual safety car, it ended up not mattering all that much because he was still in the position to get fresh tires under the second safety car. So those are a combination of his own skill and his pit wall's excellent, like good strategy calls. So I do think from that point of view, it was a good race from him. And I enjoyed his overtake on George at the beginning. Again, I think his overtake on Oscar was inevitable. If he hadn't managed to overtake Oscar, that would have been embarrassing. So him overtaking Oscar at that point in the race was just kind of like and if the roles were reversed, I would have the same point of view. If it was George trying to overtake Max on 15 lap old tires, or if it was Max trying to overtake Charles, it's an inevitability. Thank you. Lando did have a good race, so I'm not going to fight you on that. We can put him on our championship board for the weekend.
We have an honorable mention, and that is our boy Liam Lawson. He is not on the crash out list. He didn't do anything really that deserves full placement of championship behavior. So that's why he's on the honorable mentions.
At this point, my standard for Liam Lawson is having him finish a race.
Without getting any penalties or crashing into someone. And he did that.
Exactly. So, round of applause for Liam Lawson. Again, not really, he's not on the champion list. Don't get crazy about it. But he is an honorable mention because he has finally made it off the crash out list for the first time this year.
Oh, don't jinx it. We don't want to put him back on.
Knock on wood. Which brings us into our crash outs. Unfortunately, we did have 2 physical crash outs, the sadder of which was probably Kimi Antonelli, who went from hometown hero, having his entire class with him in the paddock, to not qualifying all that great, and then DNFing. And not really, I'll have to go back and look, but from my recollection, it wasn't through a fault of his own, but just car failure. So
Yeah, his car just ended up stalling out, which is what triggered the actual safety car because he ended up being a little bit further up on that hill.
So not the weekend Kimmy would have hoped for. And we have a continuation of our home race curse, which, if you remember, started with Max Verstappen last year in Zandvoort, losing the race for the first time since the circuit started hosting races. And then we had Checo Perez in Mexico. Not a good race for him. Oscar Piastri in Australia. Great recovery, not a good race.
It feels like the Zandvoort gods were like, if Max can't come in first in his home race, everyone will suffer.
Yeah. So home race curse continued for Kimi Antonelli this weekend. Not good a sign for Charles and Carlos, whose home races are next weekend and the weekend after. Also, a bad race for Mr. Esteban Ocon, whose car also crapped out on him through no fault of his own. And honestly, shocking that Haas suffered power unit issues in 2 races already. I feel like that's something that they should have fixed after the first one. But alas, they didn't.
It seems like Haas's issues then jumped into Mercedes. We've already talked about Kimi. George Russell was also having a bit of a hard time. Not only was he struggling trying to question Oscar Piastri's motives, but he also did not want to catch the hands of the FIA, recording that Lando chose to drive onto the grass. As well as his car just started having some issues that dropped him down from P3 down to P4 and further down. And the pit stop that he took didn't quite help, and he just really kind of couldn't get back up there.
Yeah, they took kind of a gamble. They started him on old medium tires, which I think they had a plan there. Like, I think they were hoping it would give him more traction right off the bat. And he did. He had a great start, actually, behind Oscar. And it looked like they were going to be the 2 competing going into the corner until Max just kind of swept himself in there. So I understand the vision that Mercedes had. It just very unfortunately did not work out. And then George continued to just kind of get bodied the whole race. And then fell all the way down to the bottom. Not all the way down to the bottom, but I think he still ended up in the points. But it wasn't a good race, especially considering where he started.
We're moving on to our next crash out, who is our rookie grandpa, Fernando Alonso. Old man was having it rough.
And the thing is, I was so upset because Aston Martin had such a good qualifying. They pushed both of the Ferraris out of Q3. They were killing it. Lance Stroll as well. Like, Fernando and Lance both did a great job. Lance also got screwed over in this race, but he wasn't nearly if he was as mad about it as Fernando was, he was quieter about it. With Fernando getting on the radio saying, I must be the world's unluckiest man. This is going to be torture. It truly like how I mean, they weren't the only ones to suffer from bad strategy and bad luck in that race, but disappointing.
Disappointing. But I do say, at least for that race, Fernando, you did have a contender at that time, and his name is Charles Leclerc. Because he might not have been as suffering as much, but he also did get bodied with poor pit stop timing. Ferrari also not wanting to catch hands with a possible blunder and mix with Alex Albon, which, from what I recall, that was a hard call to make because it did look like Charles was at fault, but it also looked like he might have gotten away with it. Um, as much as I love Charles, I also was rooting for Alex, and I did kind of, from what I saw, believe that Alex had the right of way as well. So Charles was not happy with the strategy. Charles was not happy with racing. In the words of Charles Leclerc, what did I do wrong?
Looking at it afterwards, I do think that Ferrari was right to tell Charles to give that position back. Alex, when they pulled up the diagram afterwards, was pretty clearly right alongside him. It was his corner. Um, RIP to Alex. But also, I mean, it's an interesting debate, you know, as to whether the rules around corners and right of way and pushing people off, etc., whether they've gotten a bit too rigid to the point where drivers are like, oh, is this just how we race now? We just, you know, have to yield or we have to give position back. I don't really stand like it's just an interesting debate. I've seen some drivers, obviously, Charles was mad about it. Max has expressed frustration about these rules in the past. I think it was like Christian Horner who was like, we should just scrap all the rules, go back to go-karting rules. I think Zach Brown said that he likes the rules. He thinks there should be more of them. I have to double check on that. But yeah, it's a constant debate, I think, floating around these days.
Ironically enough, Julia did use the term of what Charles did. Is this just how we do racing now? One of the things I love about Charles when he is angry is he is so relatable. He has the most relatable like comebacks. What did I do wrong? I am stupid. Like, I'm gonna cry. It's gonna be all your fault. Like, he is so relatable. I'm sorry he feels like he needs to crash out all the time.
I would like to say an honorable mention. Actually, I don't know if it's honorable or dishonorable. It probably depends on what team you were supporting. To Pirelli for bringing the softest of their tire compounds this week to try to force the teams into doing a two-stop strategy. And you know what? It worked. They damn well did force those teams into doing a two-stop strategy alongside the safety. That also helped. So props to you. You had a mission and you accomplished it.
For some reason, every time I see Pirelli or hear it, I think of pierogi. I read the word and I'm just like, pierogi. And then I'm like, Pirelli.
What is a tire if not?
No, don't say it. Don't go there.
I'm going to go there. It is a material.
That doesn't make sense. No, I don't want. No, we're not doing Julia logic.
A tire is a dumpling. Everything in this world is either a dumpling or not a dumpling. And tires are dumplings.
No, this is not like soup or salad or whatever that whole thing is. Sandwich or salad. No, it's not.
Sandwiches and salads. Dumplings. Everything's either a dumpling or not a dumpling.
You don't want to think of F1 race cars as dumplings.
Well, not the whole race car, but the wheel. The wheel is a dumpling.
Okay, but what about the whole race car? Because someone sits in there, so you could argue that that's a dumpling.
True. It is unsealed, though.
Oh my god, I can't. I cannot do
this. Do you have anything to add?
I'm adding myself to this crash out list because I had to just witness 2 minutes of dumpling talk.
On that note, that concludes our Champions and Crashouts of the Imola GP. Please let us know if we missed anybody. Who would you give a champion? Who would you give a crash out? And remember to tune in next week for the Monaco. This has been 17 to
Bye.
1. Bye.